between now and 5 o'clock. We're here for Envision Financial, and once again, Luke Smith, good afternoon to you.
Mate, welcome back.
It's good to be back. Does that sound convincing?
Well, you know, it's cold weather here, it's warm in Europe.
Yeah, it is warm.
You had me at hello, so.
And you're, travelling is so good this time of the year, anywhere outside of Canberra, I think.
Well, I think anywhere on earth's warmer than Canberra at the moment, mate. I agree completely, so.
Okay, this week we're talking about the powers of attorney. This is a very important subject, and a lot of people can become quite, not so much confused, but quite bemused by some of the things that go on with powers of attorney. And there's a lot of doubt as to just who can have powers of attorney, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I think it's one that, you know, we spoke last week about the importance of a will, and, you know, in this sort of estate planning series that we're doing at the moment, it's really just about raising the awareness of what it is, because I guess, as you say, you've hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of confusion about what different things do. We get told regularly, you know, I've got a power of attorney, it's in my will. And as I said last week, that's a bit like peeling open a banana and finding an apple. So I guess we wanted to just raise people's awareness about, you know, what they are, what they're for, and I guess a few, you know, misconceptions that they're generally only for old people. That's what we get a lot of. I don't have one of those, but I have one for my mum. So, you know, they're a really powerful document that aren't age related. And I guess today we're going to touch on some of the reasons why, some of their uses and the benefits of sort of planning ahead.
Okay, I suppose that that age thing caught me a little bit off guard there, because I assumed that was what you do.
Yeah.
But I suppose it depends on the means, your own means at the time, and what you want to leave, and how you want people to handle it when you're not here.
Yeah, look, exactly. You know, so if we draw a line in the sand, and, you know, following on from last week's show, we talked about a will, which is where do I want things to go in the event that I'm not here. A power of attorney is the ability for somebody to act on your behalf. So legally, they can effectively be you in the eyes of the law, and there are a number of different applications that people can think about. So some of the key things that you see a power of attorney used for is obviously, one, financial matters. And that could be something as simple as, say you and your wife shoot off to Paris for a holiday, and something needs to be done on an asset that you own. Let's say you needed something done on an investment property, or you needed some money withdrawn from superannuation. A power of attorney gives the person that has been given that power the legal right to act as if they are you. So they could fill out a withdrawal form, they could sign a new lease on a property, they could draw money from a bank account, or anything that could be done for you to get the best outcome for you in their capacity. So that's where I generally say to people, think about this, because it is a lot like a mobile phone, in that when you break down and you run out of petrol and you need to ring your missus and she comes and saves you, you're really glad you've got it. When you're at the football with your mates and she says it's time to come home and she won't stop ringing you, you wish you didn't have it. Love you, darling, if you're listening.
Column A, column B.
Exactly right. But it's one of those things that you'd love to have and not need, than need and not have. The other big thing is obviously medical. So obviously if you're in hospital and something needs to be done and you don't have the capacity to make an informed decision, it's really important that somebody can act on your behalf.
That can be quite a touchy one at times too, can't it?
Yeah, look, very much so. And I deal with a number of doctors and nurses who bring this to my attention all the time, that people have come in for a procedure, have something done, something may have gone pear-shaped, they need to make a quick decision and the person can't sign, and they may or may not have already had this document put in place. So this is something that can be created in the hospital. Not an ideal time to be doing those sorts of things, and I always say to people, if you can plan ahead and get it in force, then it's something that, you know, you can use if you need it. But it's very much something that you can design it in a way that allows you to say who can do what.
Okay.
So we can have financial control, we can have medical powers to say yes, do this or don't do that, and we can have an enduring power of attorney that sort of encompasses the two, that says, okay, I give permission to my husband, my wife, my partner, my child, or a combination of people, so that if somebody's not available, somebody else could act. So it's always, you know, appropriate to have a backup plan, because if you're traveling with your spouse and she has power of attorney for you and she's in Paris with you, she's about as useful as you know what. To have a kid or a backup person there to be able to act is always a good way to do it. And they're the sort of the two key things from a financial and a medical standpoint. The other thing that can be used for are also controlling entities. So where people have personal companies, family trusts, or they are the director of something that holds assets, being able to have somebody act on behalf of your entities is very important. And a very, very big one is for those out there that have a self-managed super fund. That for me is a must in relation to husband and wife or partner being the trustee of a fund or the director of the corporate trustee of a self-managed super fund. It's vital that either director could sign for each other under an enduring power of attorney arrangement just to protect the ongoing suitability of that self-managed super fund structure, because you never know what could happen. It could only take a car accident, a trip, slip in the shower, bang your head and go, hang on a sec, who am I and what am I doing here? And you've got potential capacity issues that are very hard to retrospectively fit paperwork to. So that's why I say have it and not need it, than need it and not have it.
Question without notice, Luke. Can you have more than one power of attorney?
Yeah, look, for sure. As I say, you could have your partner be your power and you could be his or her power. You could also have, two of your three kids, all three of your kids, or a combination of anything to have that backup strategy where you can sign for your partner can sign for you, and then any one of your three kids could help if you were both traveling, for example. So yeah, you can have multiple powers of attorney because ultimately you're dealing with somebody that you trust to act as if they are you. So obviously it's not something that you give out lightly and something that you really should get some assistance with in relation to professional advice.
Yeah, that's obviously a must there. Just on the multiple powers of attorney, I mean, the obvious thing is if you only got one and something happens to that person while you are incapacitated in some way or a way, you're up the creek without a paddle, really, aren't you?
Yeah, look, exactly. And as I say, and that's why I use that mobile phone reference, because having it in a drawer and being able to whip it out for whatever reason. It could be something as simple as, you've gone overseas for 3 months and the phone's been disconnected at home and it's very difficult for the kids to call up and be mum or dad. This is the sort of thing you could wheel out and then be able to get things fixed. So it's just about maintaining flexibility and control over your assets, the structures that you own, and obviously your own personal health and well-being. So, something that's very, very prudent.
Okay, just to recap on that, just the key points on that, Luke.
Yeah, look, so, someone can act for you, so make sure that, that eliminates the need for things being locked up. You obviously review who can act from time to time because people fall in and out of love, and if you've given permission for somebody to be your power of attorney and you no longer love them, or they may not act in your best interests, make sure that you trust the people that you're using with, and obviously, if you're the trustee of a self-managed super fund, make sure that your role as the trustee can be facilitated by somebody else on the off chance that you can't do what you need to do as a trustee of the fund.
Okay, we'll take a break. We're here for Vision Financial. Luke Smith in the studio with us. We'll take a break and come back in just a minute. From Vision Financial with us in the studio. This week we're talking about the powers of attorney, and that first segment gave us a fair bit of information, but there's more to come. What should people consider when thinking about their options here?
Yeah, look, as we touched on, this is the sort of thing that you need to get professional advice on. As we touched on last week with the wills, I'm obviously not a solicitor, so I recommend that people go out and speak to somebody who's a specialist in this area. I guess as a financial planner, it's our duty to try and make sure that people are aware of these sorts of things and allow them to be able to have the flexibility and control
their assets, whether you can access money out of a superannuation fund from a retirement perspective is very important. People also may have money in bank accounts, and there may not actually be bank accounts in joint names. So where you have an account or a superannuation fund where it is solely in an individual's name, making sure that somebody can draw that money for whatever purpose or reason is really, really important. Because obviously under the privacy legislation, being married doesn't actually open the doors to a structure like superannuation. So these sorts of things are very, very important. So I guess some of the key things that I'll be thinking about when I'm considering what we're going to have is obviously
what structures you maintain your assets in. So do I have a super fund? Do I have a family trust? Do I have a bank account in my own name? Anything that is in your individual person you want to be able to make sure that somebody can gain access to it.
Whatever it is
so
you
that
have
whatever
could
it
be
is you have could be
for
used
your benefits or
for
your
your
needs.
benefits or your needs.
A good example of that is obviously if there was an incapacity to go into an assisted living environment, it's very difficult to sell a house where you don't have the capacity to do so.
Yeah.
So that's a really good example of protecting both yourself financially and medically. And obviously then from a travel standpoint, for those that spend a fair bit of time travelling. I know my father spent an extensive amount of time on a plane, and if anything ever did need to be done, my mother always had power of attorney to be able to sign, because they may or may not be here. And, you know, my brother and I were a good example of that. If they were both travelling together, well, they still had the ability to have things done whilst they were outside of the country.
Also think about,
medically.
If something did happen, who would you want to be able to act on your behalf? And that's where obviously this is a very trusting environment, trusting nature and understanding this piece of legislation or this piece of documentation. Think about who you would want making decisions for you. Obviously, in families and blended families, there are different relationships that sort of bubble under the water. So being comfortable with who could actually act on your behalf is really, really important. And don't be afraid to
review it. It's not something that's ironclad.
You can change from time to time if you need to.
Yeah, look, exactly. It's something that, I say to clients regularly, have you got a will? Yes.
Enduring power of attorney? Yes. Have you reviewed who you've given the power to? Because a bit like having children when they're younger, you have a guardianship. And when the kids become 18, 19, 20 and older, they may or may not want to be dealing with the guardian, or they may not have signed up for 20 years and may not be appropriate. So it's something that is a living, breathing document.
And, when we touch on next week's show about the potential considerations of separation, that's also something that people should think about. If you have separated, think about who you've given your powers to, because that may need to be amended. It may or may not be appropriate going forwards. And also then obviously with minor children.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily have to be I guess a lot of people would opt for someone in the family to be enduring power of attorney, but it doesn't have to be.
No, exactly. There's nothing.
Obviously, you need to be able to be able to make an informed decision on behalf of an individual. But other than that, no. It's generally something that you have inside a family unit. But you can also then have third parties that are in there where you could have a shareholder in a business. You could have a co-director of an entity, your business partner, somebody that's obviously engaged with the things that you control and the things you can use. It's very important that those people that are directly impacted have an element of control over the longevity or the shareholding in a business. It doesn't have to be a
family member.
What happens if you've got, say, a family trust or a company?
Well, exactly. So, if you've got the director of a company and say there's 2 or 3 other people there, it would probably be prudent to discuss with the solicitor the controlling mechanisms that you have in place to be able to keep that entity functioning. Obviously, as a director, you have certain obligations under the Corps Act. And as a director, you have certain responsibilities that you have to adhere to as well. So making sure that the ongoing continuity and flexibility of your business is obviously vital.
So a power of attorney, could that power of attorney have any controlling interest over the affairs of your company?
Very much so.
That person is acting for you. That's something that people need to be mindful of when they give that power, because if they are signing for you, then obviously anything that is done could have ramifications personally, also professionally, and also then obviously the superannuation environment as well. So they're 3 key areas that people need to get specific advice on, because there'll be pros and cons of each situation, and you need to make sure that the person you're giving the power to has the capacity to understand and function as if they were you in your best interest, but also fellow directors. So I can't stress enough, get professional advice in this area, because it is very, very complicated. It is not as straightforward as it sounds. And as I say, today's exercise is really more about pointing out that your power of attorney is not your will. It's not in your will. And it's something that people need to think about, because it's a living, breathing document. Because it addresses the need whilst you are here.
If you've checked out for your final holiday, then obviously a power of attorney ceases to exist, and that's where a will would kick in to say, I'd like A, B and C to happen because this has happened to me. So it's really important that people understand that difference. And we get that question a lot. I've got it in my will. And I go, oh, really? That's unique.
I suppose the downside of not having a power of attorney is that your assets could be locked up, they could be frozen.
Yeah, look, and again, a wonderful example, we had one just recently where, you know, a client's wife had lost capacity and he hadn't got round to doing it. So it was very difficult then to sell shares in a family trust environment without her permission. And certain things had to be put on hold until somebody had made an assessment that she had the relevant capacity to access.
Yeah, as I say, and that's why I
liken it to a mobile phone.
You want to have
you
it,
want to have it and not need it.
Need it and not have it. And for the sake of paying some money, and they're not expensive.
They're not expensive to do.
If you don't have somebody that can draw it up, give us a ring. We've got multiple solicitors that we use in this area to try and be able to give you what you're after at a price that's obviously appropriate for you. Two that we use extensively are obviously Kellen Christopherson at Artisan Law. They'll actually come to your house. So he provides a wonderful function in relation to that, because getting around to doing these documents is always on people's lists. And obviously then Mark Peretti and Trinity. We touched on both of those gentlemen last week when we were talking about wills, and they both provided wonderful service in both of their businesses, and they really help you get to the importance of the document and raise things and delve into the what's in the house and your structures, so that you know that you've got everything in place if anybody does need to act. So as I say, I can't stress enough.
Get professional advice, and it's money well spent.
Okay, just to wind up, where can people find out more information?
Yeah, look, so, you know, people can obviously give us a ring in the office, 6260-4749. If you don't have a solicitor or you want to be put in touch with a family solicitor that'll be able to help, more than happy to do so. Obviously, people can then go to Envision Financial, www.envisionfinancial.com.au, and look at the Knowledge Centre under the Resources tab. They've got free membership there, they can join, and all of these sorts of things are in there in video form and in written form, so you can have a little dig around and get into the detail if you're that way inclined. Obviously, we've got the podcast, The Strategy Stacker, Luke Talks Money on iTunes, and YouTube, Envision Financial Canberra, so people can subscribe in there and get updates of the shows each week and stop and pause and get the key takeouts.
Great to see you. We'll catch up next week.
Yeah, see you next week. Thanks, Rob.
Luke Smith from Envision Financial.